becoming the CEO of your life.
Everybody, how you doing? Welcome again. We are here with Tonya Rapley from Going From Broke. Tonya, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. I gotta be honest with you. Me personally, not a fan of reality TV. But I see what you guys are doing here, and it has a genuine feel to the show. Normally, it's just like, all right, let's just go ahead and knock this out, do a little post production on, and whatever. But you guys legitimately do care about what's going on with these people's lives. What made you decide to like get into wanting to do this?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that that stands out to you that we care because when I've been a financial educator for over almost 10 years now. And so when I was approached to do the show, that was also something that I wanted to be aware of is how are we working with these individuals? Are we actually empowering them? And what have they done in previous seasons? And one of the things I loved was that there really was a desire to help people go from A to B financially, not just for the show. And once I started working with the producers, it also became very clear that they were invested in the outcomes of the participants that we had. Like there are genuine tears, not only from myself, but from like producers behind the scenes when we've been working with some of our participants or uncovering some of our participants' stories. We're in the room deciding on, what is the story arc? What is the story that we're telling? We're also ensuring that the story that we're telling is one that casts them in a positive light and empowers them rather than, paints them as something that they are not for the perception of ratings. And I think that's one of the downfalls of most reality TV is it's specifically for ratings where this is honestly for impact. Like our goal, myself, Dan, my co-host, we both are committed to empowering individuals financially. And so for us, it's all about the impact. It is how are we changing the lives and making the lives of these individuals better as a result of being on the show.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed, and kind of like building a playlist on building a music playlist, is you guys are arranging the show in a specific order of like kind of best to worst. Because like every episode, you're like, I think this is the worst we've seen yet. You go from $100,000 in debt to $800,000 in debt, and more and more, and you hear those numbers. And the first thing I think of is like most people probably have the idea that I'm gonna die before they're gonna collect on this. So what is the point? I might as well live my life, which is a lot of the thought that a lot of the people that you guys have talked to have. What is, do you guys, other than what's on the show, are you always offering any kind of like counseling on the side, just mentally to kind of help people cope with certain things and kind of deal with certain things?
Yeah, I think, similar. And as I said, I've been a financial educator for years. And one of the areas that I focus in has been behavioral finance and the psychology of money. Even though I'm not a psychologist, money is very much psychological. It's very much social. A lot of people spend more when they're in social situations than when they're sitting at home and not on a computer. Same as psychology, like the way that people think about themselves, think about their financial situation and their potential also impacts how they handle their money. And for some people, they don't have any outside ideas, perceptions, experiences telling them like, hey, I know you have a lot of debt, but there are solutions related to this. And sometimes when we're in that and within scarcity or within that scarcity mindset, we're not thinking of the bigger picture. And I think that's one of the things that Dan and I offer the participants of Going From Broke is we can see the bigger picture. We can pull them out of their day to day and say, look, if we make these changes, we can do this. And did you know that this was available to you? As a matter of fact, we researched what was available to you, and this is how you move through it. Or if we can't do it ourselves, we know someone in our network that we can connect you with that can also help you with it. And so I do agree with you that sometimes the financial situation can seem so daunting that people give up hope. But one of the things I think that people will see when they watch the show is individuals go from hopeless to hopeful. And I know firsthand, I've been in that position with my finances. I was my own first client, and it's possible. And I think that viewers need to see how possible it is that these are people just like them but they were able to do it. And maybe people don't have a Dan and Tonya, but they do have access to resources, or some of the resources and tools that our participants use that can impact their lives as well.
Right. I kind of was expecting this to be kind of like an undercover boss thing where it was like, well, you guys followed the 30-day plan. Here's $100,000 to go towards your loans. And that's not the case at all. You guys are not digging the hole out for them. You're teaching them, giving them the tools, to figure this out on their own, because like this is an issue that they have built themselves over years of bad financial habits, like you were saying. But it's still a big thing. I mean, even in the field that I work in, where like people's pride are like the number one reason why they put themselves in that. They don't want to deviate from their lifestyles. They're embarrassed. They want to keep up appearances, and they're willing to do that by any means possible, which is scary.
Yes.
It's crazy scary. Like you're not willing to say, hey, I can go and grab bring my lunch, versus, oh, I need to be seen doing this every day. Not that I've seen yet on the show, but if you had anybody that you just was like, yeah, this is just not even worth getting into.
We've had situations that were more challenging, even despite how optimistic we were or how badly we wanted certain outcomes for people. We did have, because human nature is human nature. And just because we come into play to give you these tools, it doesn't mean that you're going to change the way that you've been operating your lives. There's no guarantee with that. And so there's definitely been some challenges for us. And I agree. Like, I wish that we had the budget to say, you know what, we're going to bail you out of all your debt, because there are so many deserving, amazing people who are part of the show. We have veterans, we have educators, we have substance abuse counselors, we have attorneys, we have people and like attorneys who work for the government. Like, we have amazing people on the show this season and in previous seasons that I would love to provide to help out financially. But what I will say is that we were resourceful. And this season, we definitely used our resources and helped the participants use their resources to come up with some big financial wins.
Yeah, it's tough to see that too, when like you were saying in one of the episodes, like for you to have such a high paying job and be in that situation, it's almost like you dealing with a loaded deck. It's not fair. You know what I mean? Like for you to, I'm gonna go to school for almost majority of my life. They'd be like, oh, now I'm still feel like I'm working for somebody. This is pointless. I can't enjoy life. I can't do anything. It sucks. Like for you to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or anything like that. Like, oh, I got these student loans. What is the point?
Right, because you think about it's like I've been a struggling student forever, and now that I'm not a struggling student, I have to be a struggling worker. And I understand human psychology that people are like, no, I'm going to reward myself. I work hard for this degree. But one of my mottos is not now doesn't mean not ever. And sometimes we have to push the brakes and we have to reroute and decide, okay, I'm going to make these additional short-term sacrifices and figure out how to live in the meanwhile so that I can live more comfortably in the long term.
That's tough. And that's one of the questions I had as I was watching that. It was just like, I wonder if they have like some type of like, psychologist or a therapy, like, set up like therapy or something like that for people, because that is those habits are hard to break. That's not something you can do in less than 20 minutes. I mean, at least through the perspective of the show. Like that's a lifetime of habits built. And, you watch Hoarders and you see people that struggle to get rid of that stuff. I feel like it's almost kind of the same thing. You want to maintain, like I said before, that lifestyle. And, a lot of the times what I see too, especially when you got couples on the show, is they don't typically discuss each other's finances. Like they don't, even though you're marrying somebody, like you don't discuss that stuff because you're either embarrassed about it or you don't want to stress the other person out with the $200,000 student loan debts and stuff like that. My wife told me up front, I was just like, I have to figure it out, I guess. But you have questions like, well, if something happens to you, does that then fall on me? And stuff like that. And, you see a lot of people fall into situations that they didn't necessarily have anything to do with.
Yeah, well, the good thing about that is when you get married, the only debt that you're responsible for is the debt that you enter in with your spouse. And so that's a little financial education information here. So if you purchase a home with your spouse, then you're responsible for that financial responsibility together. If you have a credit card and you both are like authorized users on one another's cards, and you're responsible for that. But like student loans, you're not responsible for their student loans. Your name is not on that loan.
Yeah.
If they have a car payment that they come into the relationship with, or they have a car loan they come into the relationship with, you're not responsible for that. So I think it is important for people to understand. But even given that, despite not being financially responsible for your partner, you are still responsible for your partner. And so it is also very important for people to realize that what you do impacts your spouse. And I think that there's a couple of instances where we see that this season. We have a few couples, and what you do impacts your spouse. And that's all I'll say. We see a lot of impacts occurring.
I've noticed like you said, student loans, which seems to be an ongoing trend throughout the show. And you guys put out the message like, hey, if you need help, with student loans, hit us up, call us, we'll see what we can do. As my wife says all the time, it's almost kind of predatory to teenagers and youngsters, because they'll target certain individuals like, hey, we can get you what you want, but and it'll cost you later on, but you don't think about that because you have what you want at the end of the day. You got the job that you want and the field, however that pans out financially for you at the end. But student loan seems to be the enemy of this entire show, right?
I mean, well, the show was initially about student loans. That was when they came together to think about what they wanted to tackle. It did start out with student loans, and then as we got into it, we also realized that people have credit card debt, people have medical debt, people have mortgage-related debt, and sometimes all mortgage-related debt isn't good debt. And so we had a lot of different scenarios that people were suffering financially, not just because of student loans, even though student loans tend to be a large portion of individuals' debt portfolio. And one of the things I really admire about my co-host, Dan, is that he is so passionate about making college more affordable and reducing student loan debt across the country, to the point where, he owns and operates, he is a CEO of Chegg. And he, even at that company, they do a lot to put students first. That's their motto. And so while it is, student loans are a common theme, I think that's also reflective of the larger society. A lot of people have student loans. Like a lot of people have student loans. So I think that we also want to make sure that people see themselves in this and how they're getting themselves out of student loan debt.
I've also been noticing a trend of people that do, they don't have student loans, but they have ascended to the point where they make over $100,000, but their credit is trash, and that's just the same as you can't do anything, without the credit, you can't get an apartment, which sucks. You can't buy a car, you make the money on paper, but you can't do anything credit wise, which seems to hurt a lot of people too.
Yes, living paycheck to paycheck is not just exclusive to people who live below a certain income level or exist in an income bracket. You living paycheck to paycheck affects people across all income levels. And that's one of the reasons why we want to highlight that on the show, because a lot of time there is financial help or assistance for people who make below a certain amount, but individuals who don't, they have their financial responsibilities, and there's often not a lot of support or a lot of help for them in that space. And when it comes to credit, I always say credit is your adult GPA. And so, when you're applying for colleges, one of the things they want to know was your GPA. When you're applying for a loan, one of the things they want to know is your credit score, because they want to know how responsible you've been with finances in the past. And making a lot of money doesn't mean that you've been financially responsible or utilize that money in a way that it benefits you.
Right. I guess, congrats on season 3. What is the overall message you think, 2 seasons in so far, going into 3, what is your overall goal going into this next season that you think that you guys are trying to do?
I think that this next season, our goal is to show that financial stress or financial emergencies can happen to anyone. It can change anyone's life. One of the things you want to do is be aware of that, and to how to prepare financially by building a savings account, building a solid financial future. But also, just because things happen to you doesn't mean you can't get through it. And we want to help people get through their financial mess so they can really start enjoying life as they desire and intend to.
I've seen a lot of the times I've seen you suggest a second job, and I was just talking to somebody else about this. And I was like, I watched a few episodes. Like, the second job, I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but depending on the schedule of the main, how do you guys determine like if a person is able to do this or not? Because like half the time, you might have kids at home or something like that. You might not have the option to do a second job or build secondary income. And I seen that's one of the steps is like, hey, get more income, but not all the time is those options available. What are your other suggestions for that?
And this is where the tough love comes in, right? Because there really are only two ways to get out of financial binds, and that
Right.
is to cut your expenses or to make more money. And so when we're suggesting, we always look at people's expenses first and how they can cut back on their expenses. But then we look at what are the different ways in their lives they can make more money. Sometimes making more money doesn't mean getting another job. Sometimes that means, taking a few more hours at your current job and working overtime or staying a little later, staying on the clock a little later, finding additional opportunities. And I think that you'll see in the show, we're very considerate of people's lifestyles. Like, I'm not going to tell a new mother who has a 3-month-old at home who is struggling to find childcare that she needs to go out and go to work and try to make additional money. What we are going to try to do is figure out, are there things that you have access to or ways that you can make additional money based on where you are? And if that's not the case, what are the tools or resources out there to help you bridge that gap? And what are the expenses we can cut back on? So yes, I am an advocate for making as much money as possible to help you turbocharge your financial goals. But we do understand that sometimes it's not reasonable for people. But just because getting an extra job isn't an option doesn't mean you still don't have options when it comes to making more money. And I think that that's something that's important for the viewing audience to understand. And that's something that became important for our viewers to understand. I'm sorry, not our viewers, our participants to understand.
Yes, that's definitely a important lesson because, like I said, I mean, the show was super educational. Like I said, I didn't think I would be into it as much as I have been. That watch, I'm like, okay, I want to see how this plays out. And
I'm gonna be honest, me too. No, when I watched it, I often don't watch things that I'm a part of or listen to podcasts that I'm on. But sometimes I just watch it, and I was like, "This is really good." Like, this is a good show. So and that was after I watched the second season. So I was so enthusiastic about the third season, and I really think that we just blew it out the water with this third season. I don't know how we would top it the next season.
Look, I'm happy to see Black women out here giving really good financial advice, putting people where they need to be. And, hopefully they listen to you at the end of the day. Because I've seen a couple episodes where you just like, look, I can't, this, like, you heard what I told you to do and you chose not to do it. It's like, you gotta be somebody's mom in every episode. Like, look, you heard what I told you to do. You didn't do it. So this is on you. You know what I mean? But
why did you do it? Why? What is the reason you called us? And there were there were quite a few you called us moments. Like, what did you call us for then? And so, I try as a financial educator, I try to move and deal with my clients with compassionate accountability. I'm going to be compassionate for your situation, but I am also going to hold you accountable, and I'm not going to take those excuses that might be socially acceptable in other realms, because I know how money works. I've worked with enough people to understand some of the choices that people make on a day-to-day basis and what is and what isn't out of your control. And there are times where I am at my wit's end. I'm glad that I have a co-host, because there are times where I have to step in. There are times where Dan is like, you know what, Tonya, I got this one. I see it's frustrating you. Let me handle this one. So I'm glad that we're an awesome tag team.
I was just about to ask you. I noticed that you guys will, slide into, the person's home or come and talk to. How do you guys decide on who goes where based off of how close you are at the time? Or
yeah, it's based on how close we are. It's based on our schedules too. I'm a mother of a toddler. Dan's children are like grown women who work in the workforce, so he has a little more flexibility than me. Right. But sometimes he doesn't, because he's a CEO of a publicly traded company, and so it usually is based on our availability as well as where it's located. We did have a couple this time that was way further west than I desired to go, and so I kind of made that decision myself. I said, "Hey, they're lovely people, but I got to keep it in Georgia with my child on this one." So what's one of the things I loved about this season is that last season, it was on the heels of COVID. People were still very cautious, understandably so. And so this season, we actually got to meet our guests in person. Me and Dan actually got to work with each other in person. Some of the producers that I worked with last season, I hadn't even met in person yet. It was my first time meeting them this season. And so I think that all that chemistry really does come together, and just we created something magical with season 3.
Well, look, you guys are great together. I really appreciate that you guys are generally, trying to help people out here that, have been oversold on the American dream, as you guys would say. And sometimes, sometimes you get a bad hand, and you just gotta kind of rebuild and see what you could do. But one of the things I tell people all the time is a lot of people now don't really have the mental kind of process to, like, when they fall, they stay down. They don't know how to get themselves back up. They don't want to ask for help. Like I said, the pride thing, they don't want to ask for help, and they don't want to see anything other than what's in front of them as an option. And you guys definitely bring in 20 different things that should have been obvious to the person that you're talking to from the beginning. And you say you're reiterating that. So definitely good job on the show. Season 3. Anything else that you want to say going into the season that you want the fans to know?
I would just say, I want people to just go into it with an open mind. I want people to go into an understanding that these are real people, and this could be you. And so, there are some people who make some questionable decisions. So don't judge our participants, but also just really watch it and understand how you can apply. I ask people, look for ways you can apply what we're teaching in your own life, because we don't just want to impact the individuals who participated with us as cast members, but we want to impact those who are watching as well.
Okay. Well, Tonya, thank you so much. Thank you for doing this interview with me. I really appreciate you. If I didn't mention before, my name is Terrell, and I really appreciate you for taking the time to do this with me today.
Thank you so much, Terrell. Thank you for taking the time out to interview us, and I really am glad that you enjoyed the show.
You got me hooked now.
I hope that your listeners enjoy the show too.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
See you.